And joining us now for more is Republican Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, who serves on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Senate Banking Committee. He also served as U.S. Ambassador to Japan in the first Trump administration, and he is here with us in our Washington, D.C. studio. Senator, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. It's great to have you. When we consider the language we've heard from President Trump just today, the idea that don't rush me when it comes to Iran, he said on True Social, I have all the time in the world. Should he be allowed all the time in the world without having to come to you and your colleagues in Congress?
Well, he's got all the cards, and what he's doing is negotiating. I think that's what seems to shock people here in Washington sometimes, is the fact that President Trump isn't telegraphing every move. I know that frustrates many, but at the same time, I think it puts him in the best possible negotiating position.
But he argues that it's not even clear who we're negotiating with, who has the authority to make a deal.
You know, I think the Iranian regime needs to figure this out. It reminds me of the old Thelma and Louise scene where they're heading off the cliff. That's the Iranian leadership, and you've got the moderate terrorist arguing with the super aggressive terrorist over control of the wheel. Meanwhile, they're about to drive the thing over the cliff. They should take the off-ramp. And I hope that's the message they're getting from President Trump.
Is that who we're dealing with, terrorists?
Indeed.
I know you see Iran's regime historically in that way, but a new, more moderate regime, as the president has put it, is the Speaker of the Parliament a terrorist? And if so, why are we talking to them?
Joe, I think anybody that shouts death to America, death to Israel should be considered in that light. And as we know, Iran's been the largest state sponsor of terror in the world. Not the 90 million Iranians that we're talking about. I think they've been subject to this sort of leadership.
But why negotiate with terrorists? Why not start attacking Iran again tonight?
Listen, I think that's going to be up to the president and to the generals on the ground. But no options are off the table. And as we see what's happening, and we've heard reports that they're putting mines back in the Strait of Hormuz, the president's not going to tolerate that. And I think that message needs to be made loud and clear.
Well, so long as the mines may be there, or the risk of them is enough perhaps to cause commercial shippers to not want to transit the strait, a blockade obviously in place. We are still at a standstill, and that is a major choke point for the global economy. You are on the banking committee, obviously, sir. How concerned are you, as we hear frequently from market participants, that this is a major supply shock that they don't even think market prices currently are reflecting? We heard from the president himself today saying, I thought oil would be at $200 a barrel. I wonder if you have that same concern, that we actually could see
oil still hasn't gotten to where it was after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Not that I'm hoping that it will go higher, certainly not, but I think the markets are looking at this. There are a number of mitigating factors that are taking place. We're moving more certainly out of the United States of America right now. Pipelines are being opened. I think that it's a different story today than it might have been even 4 years ago. The real key, though, is long-term, medium to long-term. We need to solve this problem. The Strait of Hormuz has been the Damocles sword over the entire world economy that the Iranians have held for years and years. I'm talking decades. This has always been a concern. This has always been the threat that they've had, and they're making every attempt they can to exercise it. But I'll make this point very clearly. Their options, meaning the Iranian regime's options, are becoming more limited every day. Their munitions have been largely destroyed. Their capabilities are basically at the bottom of the sea. And if you talk about timing, their capacity to store oil is being consumed right now. Once that capacity is full, because they can't sell this oil, they can't move it out because of the blockade, once that is full, and we're talking a matter of days, Kaylee, that's going to be a huge problem on the Iranian economy, because they're going to have to start shutting down the production facilities then. That's, I think, the breaking point, and the cards are much more on President Trump's side of the table right now than they are on the Iranian regime.
You mentioned the Navy at the bottom of the sea, and the president says 159 naval ships are all at the bottom of the Gulf right now. But he referred to, I think, wise guy ships as what he called these small gunboats in that meeting with reporters just now. And of course, he says he wants the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill them. But if this is still so much a threat, small boats as they are, it sounds like Iran does still have somewhat of a navy, no?
Well, they do have capacity to terror.
Yeah.
That's what they've been in business doing. I'll share this story with you because it'll give you a sense for who we're dealing with. When I was U.S. Ambassador to Japan, one of my jobs was to ask the Japanese to stop buying Iranian crude oil. That was part of the maximum pressure campaign then. It was not an easy set of conversations, but Prime Minister Abe ultimately agreed to do that. He went to Iran to deliver that message, and Tehran personally. The disrespect shown to the Japanese and by the Iranian regime was unbelievable. They sent two of these speedboats that we're talking about. These boats go out and attach limpet mines, they're called, the magnetic mines to the sides of the cargo ships, and they blew them up. That's who we're dealing with. And Prime Minister Abe trying to make the best of a tough situation, a 70-year relationship, as he told me, and he wanted to deliver the message.
These were Japanese tankers?
These are Japanese tankers, and that was the Ayatollah's response to that. So very difficult to deal with these people. That's the point. But President Trump has finally stepped up, and he said he's going to deal with it. And I might also bring this to bear. I think most everybody knows this, but it's helpful to remind you. There was a math problem here that we're trying to solve. And that math problem is quite simple. The pace at which the Iranian regime was building ballistic missiles was ramping up dramatically. And we have an exquisite set of capabilities to take those out. You've seen Patriot missiles go and take them out. Yeah. But they can make ballistic missiles more rapidly than we can make Patriot missiles. And at some point, they might have overwhelmed our capacity to take them out. They were at 2,500 ballistic missiles. You start working that math, you can see why President Trump moved our military capabilities into the region while he tried diplomatic efforts. I think Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner did an amazing job, but they also read the room right. The Iranians weren't serious about a diplomatic solution at that point in time. But the timing is relevant to the capacity of our military to be able to address Iran. And we were reaching that capacity. Now, the 2,500 down to a fraction of what it was, and we're in a much better position to deal with the threat. And I think the world has seen what the Iranians would do if they were able to obtain nuclear capabilities. If they could have gotten a ballistic missile set beyond our ability to deal with it, they'd have had all the time they want to develop their nuclear capabilities. President Trump clearly understood that. Our military understands that. That's why it had to be dealt with now.
Well, and we appreciate you weighing in on this as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, but you also serve on the Banking Committee. You had the opportunity to question the president's pick to be the next Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, at his confirmation hearing earlier this week. Of course, his confirmation is not likely to move forward at this point because there is still an open investigation into current Chairman Powell over the renovation of the building, and your colleague Tom Tillis, therefore, is not willing to cast a vote for confirmation to advance Kevin Warsh. He has floated the idea of the committee taking over the investigation into the cost overruns as a potential off-ramp here. In the name of getting his next pick in, should President Trump take that off-ramp?
There are a number of discussions going on right now, Kayleigh, and I'm not going to get ahead of those discussions, but I spoke with both Senator Tillis and Senator Scott last night. Senator Scott's the chair of the committee, and I certainly had a number of conversations with Kevin Warsh. I think he's absolutely the right person for the job to lead the Fed, and he should be ready to go. I think he is ready to go. We've had the hearing. I'll remind you of this. Everybody's heard the statements that Senator Tillis has made, but we've got a lot of Democrats on the Banking Committee as well. They could move to get him out of committee just as easily. And most of these Democrats have already supported Kevin when he was up for Fed governor before. So I don't think it's just Tom Tillis and his issue, but we've got all of the Democrats in the Senate Banking Committee that have the opportunity to step up and help us move a Fed chair into place. If they're not going to do that, then we're back to the same place we are with the shutdown of the government back last fall, what we're having to deal with right now in shutting down Homeland Security. I hate to think that they're going to shut down or block the next Fed chairman, who is as eminently qualified as Kevin is at a time that we need.
Well, speaking of shutdowns, you've been up all night. Our listeners and viewers probably can't tell, and I'm amazed how good you look right now after a 3:30 a.m. vote to pass this framework, this budget framework that will lead to reconciliation. The news came even later, 4 a.m., or maybe that's earlier, when John Thune told reporters he did not have a guarantee from Speaker Johnson that he would bring it to the floor or that he could get the votes in the House to pass this. Is that where this stops again?
I don't think it's going to stop. I mean, Senator Thune is a straight shooter, and I think that he's certainly going to tell you the way it is. But there's a lot of momentum here. There's a great desire by the White House, certainly on the Senate side, and I think our friends in the House realize that sometimes the Senate has a different set of rules. Yeah. And it's less, it's not as easy for us to pass
called 60.
What might be exactly not as easy to pass in the House. In the Senate as it may be in the House. So there'll be continued negotiations going on, but I'm optimistic we'll get at the right answer here. We need the Department of Homeland Security open. We were just talking about the situation in Iran. The notion that there could be sleeper cells here is very real if you think about it. In the last administration, between 2021 and 2024, there were 1,500 Iranians that were encountered. That's the polite word they use at our southern border. Half of those were released into the United States. So the odds of there being some type of sleeper mechanism here, greater than zero. We need Homeland Security back open to deal with this. This is the worst possible time to be shutting down the Department of Homeland Security, and I think our colleagues in the House recognize that too.
Well, and as we're talking about security and terrorism risk, I'd also like to ask you, Senator, about extending FISA in Section 702. The House just put forward a revised bill today that would extend that authority for 3 years. Doesn't seem, though, to give especially hardline conservatives some of the warrant requirements that they were after. How do you think this ends? Is the Senate ultimately going to have to be the one that leads the charge and jams something?
We are discussing that yesterday, actually, and there are going to be more discussions next week. Again, I don't want to get ahead of those discussions because they're delicate. It's important that we get it right. But I'm optimistic that we'll get to a resolution here soon.
Great. This is very helpful, and we'd love to see you more often.
Thank you.
Senator, thanks for coming back. I hope you get some rest.
Yeah.
Republican Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee.